You're looking at a live view of the Falcon Heavy on historic launch pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center, awaiting liftoff at 6:35 p.m. local time. Welcome to our live webcast of the Falcon Heavy Arabsat 6A mission from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. My name is Jesse Anderson, and I'm a manufacturing engineer here at SpaceX. I'm so excited to be here with you today, along with my co-hosts, bringing you coverage of the second launch of Falcon Heavy. It's the first Falcon Heavy launch carrying a payload for a customer, and tonight our customer is Arabsat.
And I'm Alex Siegel. I'm a material planner here at SpaceX. We first flew our Falcon Heavy vehicle a little more than a year ago. It is the world's most powerful operational rocket by a factor of 2. With 28 engines, 3 boosters, 3 separation events, and 3 landing attempts, there's going to be a lot of activity happening all at once. The payload tonight is a geostationary communications satellite, which will provide state-of-the-art communication services to customers in the Middle East and Africa.
Tonight's launch window is about 2 hours long, and we're planning to launch at the top of that window. If we're unable to launch tonight, our backup window opens up on Saturday, April 13th. We're currently at T-minus 14 minutes and counting, and all systems are go in Cape Canaveral.
Today, Falcon Heavy will deliver the Arabsat 6A payload to its intended orbit more than 20,000 miles above the Earth's equator. That's significantly higher than normal, which is why we're flying a Falcon Heavy. Now let's take a closer look at the rocket. Falcon Heavy is essentially 3 Falcon 9 rockets strapped together, which means it can carry much larger payloads not only to Earth orbit, but to the Moon and Mars as well. Like the Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy is a 2-stage launch vehicle. The big difference, of course, is that the Falcon Heavy first stage is comprised of 3 cores, and Falcon 9 only has 1. Each one of these cores has 9 Merlin 1D engines, making for a total of 27 engines overall, as you can see on your screen. Now, altogether, these engines produce over 5 million pounds of thrust, equal to 18 747s at takeoff. In fact, the engines produce so much power that we don't run them at full thrust all at once until after liftoff. For the mission today, each one of these 3 Falcon 9 boosters is brand new. It's also going to be the first time we are flying Falcon Heavy with our upgraded Block 5 cores, which feature more lift capacity, a beefed-up heat shield, and other changes to make the boosters more reliable and easier to reuse.
During ascent, Falcon Heavy will throttle its thrust up and down on both side boosters and the center core to balance aerodynamic and structural loads on the vehicle. About 70% of the way through the first stage burn, the 2 side boosters will separate and come back to Earth for a simultaneous landing at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station on Landing Zone 1 and Landing Zone 2. At this point, the mission will proceed just like a standard Falcon 9 flight. The center core will keep firing for another minute, then we'll perform a standard stage separation from the second stage. We will attempt to land the center core on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, which is currently stationed about 535 nautical miles off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. It's worth mentioning that for this mission, bringing back the center core is challenging. If we are able to land all 3 cores tonight, it will be particularly exciting. The second stage is exactly the same as any other Falcon 9 flight. Tonight, the second stage will be sending our payload to geosynchronous transfer orbit. The spacecraft will then maneuver into a geostationary orbit more than 20,000 miles above the Earth's equator. Now, to put that into perspective, that's equivalent to almost an entire trip around the world, traveling along the Earth's equator.
Speaking of the satellite, it is safely enclosed inside the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which is the pointed cone on the very top of the rocket. This protects the payload from aerothermal loads, heating, and contamination during ascent. Now, once we reach the vacuum of space, we will jettison the fairing as the second stage continues on its journey to orbit. While Mr. Steven, our ship, will not be supporting today's mission, we do plan to recover the fairing pieces from the ocean using our recovery ships Go Searcher and Go Pursuit. And lastly, you'll notice the tall structure next to the rocket, which we call the fixed service structure. Its primary function is to provide passengers access to the Crew Dragon vehicle during crewed missions. But since we do not have any passengers aboard today's flight, the fixed service structure does not have a role to fill. Now let's check in on how the countdown is going.
Good Thursday afternoon. I'm John Innsbrucker, the Falcon Principal Integration Engineer at SpaceX. We are T-minus 10 minutes, 28 seconds from the launch of the Falcon Heavy. As I like to say in my updates, the SpaceX team is working no significant issues and is on time for launch. Now, Falcon Heavy rolled out to the pad with the payload early Wednesday morning and went vertical about 6 hours later. Now, after yesterday's scrub, the vehicle remained vertical on the pad. The pad deck was cleared at about T-minus 8 hours to begin today's hazardous operations. Just before we began the webcast, the SpaceX launch director polled the 9 members of the launch team and got a go for both propellant loading and for launch. Now, we're currently loading propellant on all 3 first stage boosters and the second stage. Now, our propellants are an oxidizer, liquid oxygen, and a fuel, kerosene. Why did we pick these 2? Well, obviously in space there's no oxygen needed to support combustion. So we bring our own as liquid oxygen. It's readily available and it supports efficient combustion. We chill it to get it as dense as we can in order to maximize how much we can load onto the rocket. Our fuel is RP1, essentially a purified kerosene. It is safe, easily available, has a lot of history. The Saturn V first stage flown from this very pad on the moon missions used liquid oxygen and kerosene. Now on the spacecraft side, the Arabsat 6A team began transfer to internal power at T-minus 21 minutes, and just a few minutes ago they completed that. They are go for launch. Now for tonight's mission, we're using the Falcon Heavy to place the satellite into an orbit with an apogee near 90,000 kilometers. This is much higher than the apogee of a normal geotransfer orbit. With this higher apogee, it is more efficient for the satellite to maneuver into its final geo orbit. The range is currently green. They are prepared to support today's mission. And for the weather, the good news is the upper altitude winds are much lower today, so both ground level and upper altitude winds are go for launch. No worries there. Now, as Jesse mentioned, we did start the day with a 2-hour launch window. However, now that we are into LOX loading, we don't have the ability to hold the countdown. If there is an issue in the last minutes, there isn't enough time in the window to stop, reload the cold liquid oxygen, and still launch today. There is a backup date, though, this Saturday, April 13th at the same time. Now, as I've said before, launch is hard, and Falcon Heavy is no exception. We are essentially counting down 3 rockets simultaneously. So the SpaceX team is going to be conservative in case anything pops up in the last minutes. But as the energy from the team gathering below me outside of the Mission Control Center is growing, we are go at T-minus 7 minutes and 20 seconds.
As we mentioned earlier, the payload being launched tonight is for our customer Arabsat, one of the world's top satellite providers in the Arab world, reaching tens of millions of homes in more than 80 countries. Arabsat 6A, which was built by Lockheed Martin, is a high-capacity telecommunications satellite that will deliver television, radio, internet, and mobile communications to customers in the Middle East, Africa, and Europe. Here's a quick message from our customer.
With the new generation of Arabsat satellites, welcome to our neighborhood. Arabsat, our world, your world.
Ground gas closeout complete.
Go for launch.
Minutes, 30 seconds. Minutes, 15 seconds.
Vehicle's flight pressures.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
Vehicle's pitching downrange.
As we're beginning deep throttle. Center core.
Throttling down at T plus 40 seconds to
Side booster
prepare
throttle
for
bucket.
maximum dynamic pressure. We're hearing reports. Power and telemetry are nominal.
Vehicle is supersonic.
You may have heard the call out on
Side
net
booster
one.
stepping up.
Vehicle is supersonic. Side boosters are throttling back up on power as we're
Max
through the
Q.
period of maximum dynamic pressure. Trajectory looking good. You can hear the applause behind me as we've gotten past maximum. We've begun dropping power on the side boosters to decrease loads on the center core. Continuing to decrease loads to minimize acceleration on the Falcon Heavy structure. Coming up on booster engine cutoff, called BECO, and separation of the two side boosters.
Go.
Booster separation confirmed.
Successful separation, if you can hear me over the cheering. Side boosters now beginning a flip to begin returning back to Cape Canaveral. Everything looking good on the flight of Falcon Heavy. The next major event, main engine cutoff of the center core and separation ignition of the second stage. Bottom middle view shows the view looking up into the nozzle of the second stage engine.
Go.
Main engine cutoff, center core shut
Stage
down.
separation confirmed. Impact ignition.
Again, over the cheering, MVAC-D engine up on power, it looks good. Side boosters looking good, still burning on their way back to Cape Canaveral. Grid fins are out on the center core.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Here comes the fairing separation, and there it goes. We also have successful shutdown of the side booster boost back burn. So T plus 4 minutes, 25 seconds into flight. Side boosters on their way back to Cape Canaveral. Center core coasting
Stage
out over
2
the
trajectory
Atlantic.
nominal.
Stage 2 looking good with a nominal
See
trajectory.
those heading home right now. As a reminder, today we'll be attempting to recover all three of the first stage cores, and all three boosters are currently on their way heading home. In just a few minutes, the side boosters will execute an entry burn, followed by a landing burn, and the center core will do much the same a few minutes later. Both burns are meant to slow the stage's speed down rapidly before landing.
At the time of separation, the side boosters were traveling slow enough to turn around and make their way
Stage
back to
2
land at our
mid-flight guidance.
side-by-side landing pads. The center core, on the other hand, is going too fast to efficiently return to the Cape, so we're using our autonomous drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. If we have a successful landing today, the side boosters will be reflown on our next Falcon Heavy mission, STP-2.
Side booster entry burn has started.
And there's the re-entry burn beginning. And the re-entry burn is complete for the side boosters. Now, coming up in about 30 seconds, the center core, which you see on your center screen, will begin its re-entry burn. Coming up in about 5 seconds here, the side boosters landing burn will begin as well.
Side booster landing burn has started.
You can see the side boosters coming down. An amazing view. You can hear our crowd going crazy right now. Both side boosters has landed on our landing pads. Zone 1 and Zone 2. What an amazing
Stage 2
sight to
internal
see.
guidance.
Now we're waiting for the engine to shut down on the second stage and for the center core to land. Now, if all goes well, we'll have successfully recovered all three boosters, which we have never done before. Now coming up in about 20 seconds, we're going to listen for confirmation of SECO 1, or second engine cutoff 1.
Coming up here in about 15 seconds will be the center core landing burn beginning.
want to land
And we
where
are
it is starting?
landing on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. And
Center core landing legs are deployed.
looks like we lost the live view. For the first time on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. For the first time, we've landed all 3 boosters for Falcon Heavy. What an amazing day. Take a quick break. You can hear our crowd going wild. The primary mission is still going well. We are about to enter the coast phase, so we're going to take a quick break. But we'll leave you with an animation that shows you where we are throughout the coast phase. We will be back at about T plus 26 minutes for second stage relight and the deployment of our satellite.
Separation.
Spacecraft separation confirmed.
As you can tell behind me, the folks who watched the mission cheering. Arabsat 6A headed away into the desired orbit, doing its mission in space. That puts a capper on what's been a completely normal day here at SpaceX.